Yes, we are running. All right. So, welcome to the Wealthy Ironworker podcast. This is going to be episode, I think it's 2, part B or part 2, something like that. It's a continuation. The previous episode in the series, anyway, I was talking about the stigma against the trades. And it's a very real one. So I was going over a survey done by Metal Supermarkets. Their article can be found in the AWS's website. You can go over to the wealthyironworker.com and you can find that over there. Now, the main tenet was, at least from that specific podcast episode, is I was talking about the actual stigma. And if you don't think there's a stigma, then you're living under a rock, because there most certainly is. And it's actually borne out by numerous specific data points that the survey brings out. Some of the ones that are really damaging, like 68%, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But 68% of people that were surveyed said they were never told about the trades from their guidance counselor, which is the person who's supposed to provide guidance and counsel young people, right, in the trajectory of, okay, well, what is it we're going to be looking at to get you established in a lifelong career? So 68%. And then, of course, my favorite one, which is 51% of people surveyed said they would rather be a barista than a welder. And I spent probably about a half hour or so going over, that and talking about it and kind of expanding on it a little bit. But I thought to myself, when I got towards the end, well, instead of just merely talking about the stigma, let's talk about some things that I believe could help companies and the entire industry kind of turn things around a little bit. Surprise, surprise. Almost all of these, right, are going to revolve around being very proactive in getting your name and the industry's name out there and trying to change the perception that people have. Also, there's an article, and I think it's number 7, but it's called The Pros and Cons of the Skilled Trades. It is the most visited article on the website, and we go over the pros, which are really good, and then we also go over the cons. Some of them are real, and some of them are perceived. They're also, you can loosely say, are associated with some of the stigma, right? The fact that you think that there are people who out there that walk this earth who think that people working the trades are dumb. And it's a huge misnomer. I've met some really intelligent people. They just like to have they like to see things done. They like, tangible. They like to touch things. They like to work with their hands and see things done. And I've seen them. They're very, very smart people. So while I address, some of them down the line, and there is kind of a sister post, it's a standalone. So for this podcast episode, then, we're going to take the time and I'm going to talk about some things that I believe are going to be very helpful in addressing the stigma, right? Trying to change people's perception and demonstrate that, oh, by the way, we're not, back in the dinosaur age, for that matter. And the first one is going to be the adoption of technology. Now, you can clearly see companies, I talked about this a little bit in the previous episode, but you can clearly see companies that are doing this. There are companies who are actually going, okay, well, let's look at how we can embrace the technological perspective, bring some young people or younger people in, and their, comfortability with technology, and let's see where we're at. They may not have the level of expertise that, let's say, the company that's 50 to 55 years old is their average worker, but they will in 10 years, and they will have made the change. The major difference that I can tell, anyway, from companies out there in the field today, yes, you may have an abundance of experience because people may want to work for you, because you haven't changed things. You're not, using technology, and, they're free to kind of basically operate how they've been for the past 30 years. And then you compare them to the other companies that are actively going through the change. And what typically takes place is, again, remember that companies are nothing more than the people who work for them, right? For the most part, they're the ones that kind of drive the direction. And so when you've got a company that's comprised of a bunch of older people who are very hesitant to embrace technology, right? They're trying to stave off the change. They're trying to push off the change. And so that's why you get somebody that's 65 and is ready to retire, and the company offers them an enormous amount of money to stay because that company is trying to push off change as long as possible. Contrast that with the company that, whether they had to or they embraced it, has begun this technological shift. And what you're seeing then are companies going through growing pains. And it's also one of the reasons why, there are critics of the construction industry who say, okay, well, it's an industry, right, that is hesitant to embrace technology. That's some contractors, and some people are. Some are not, right? Some are not. And those companies that want to work with specific generals or are on certain jobs that are adopting, technology that's forced technology, meaning the GC's like, this is what we're doing, or the end user, this is what we're doing. This is what you're going to have to get on board with. This is the technology that we're using, whether it's Bluebeam or Revit or whatever it happens to be. That's not the adoption of technology that I'm actually talking about for point number one. What I'm really talking about is, for example, if I were in your area, right? Because, we're going to run off a search engine optimization. I'm going to go to your area and I'm looking for, I'm just going to make it up, an ironworker contractor or a mechanical contractor, or I'm looking for an electrical contractor. When I put that into the, to the search bar, does your website come up first? Or is it merely a box to check? I've got a website. People can look me up because I've got it on my business card if I actually give it out. But do you have it? Right? There are still loads of people, when they're looking for an electrical contractor, when they're looking for a mechanical contractor, when they're looking for an ironworker contractor, fill in the blank here, they go to Google. They ask Google. I know this for a fact. One of the major reasons why is because the pros and cons of the skilled trades is the most visited article on the website. It is every day. Every day I can look at the data, I can look at the analytics, and I can see where Google is driving traffic to the website for a number of reasons. But the data is clearly there, right? People are looking, and they're looking for what are the pros and cons? And Google is looking for somewhere reputable to drive them, because Google also wants you to come back and continue to use their search engine. It's the same with DuckDuckGo and Edge and whatever search engine you like, right? You're going to find the pros and cons of the skilled trades. It doesn't happen by accident. Likewise, if somebody is looking for a contractor, they want to expand their sub base that they're working with, or they just have a problem and they're just trying to reach out to somebody, if your website doesn't come up first, as far as I'm concerned, that's an issue. I've worked with contractors, and every single place that they were introduced to and had conversations with, they've been around for 20 some years, and every single owner said, I'd never heard of you guys. And they had a website up, and they had a brochure or line card, depending on what where you're at in the industry and what terminology you actually use. They had all the boxes checked, and yet they remained in large part anonymous because they weren't actually embracing technology. And it seems like it's very harsh for someone to say that. And the reason why is because when you're a reputable, when you're a multi-craft contractor, for example, let's say you've got ironworkers and millwrights and whatever, you've got a fair amount of tools that you've purchased because, well, quite frankly, you need the skill set, right? And it seems like, okay, well, we're investing our money into that. Okay, that's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want skilled trade contractors out there everywhere. But if people can't find you when they need a contractor, are you doing yourself are you doing any good for yourself? Or are you working hard, but working hard at the wrong thing? It's misapplied. It's misdirected, right? And so if you've got a website and you can't go to Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever and find your website at the top, that's a problem. There's ways that you can work around that. You can actually talk to somebody who resides in the space, right? There's a little thing called search engine optimization. Quite regular. You could have somebody that's active in putting articles out there. You could have somebody that is consistently putting out blog posts or articles about the work that you've done. You could also continually link that with LinkedIn, right? If you don't have a business profile for LinkedIn, what are you even doing? And then you can sit there and continually post stuff on LinkedIn, right? And then what you can do on your website then is basically track back or plug the articles and whatnot, which is just free, free saturation and exposure to the website. So it demonstrates to Google and the search engines that you're fairly active on your website, if you will. And what that does then is that allows Google to see, okay, well, this isn't just a placeholder. Somewhere for somebody to go when they have the exact address, but also someplace that people can go when they're looking for specific questions. I mean, your articles could be what to do if this is the case. What is this? Very much in tow with what I'm doing on the website and will continue to do going forward. You could do that as well. And it will help you to drive traffic to your website and help you get exposure. And I mentioned LinkedIn. So we're going to make a nice little segue into point number 2, which is social media. Now, most of the people who are probably mid 40s and older, they might have a Facebook, and that's probably it. And then they'll say, well, I use Facebook just to keep up with family or whatever, and that's the case. My own personal self, I had a Facebook, which I still have, and I, got a LinkedIn, and that was the totality of all of the social media accounts that I ended up with. Started the website in 2018, started the podcast late 2024. But before I did, I went ahead and reserved the moniker, The Wealthy Ironworker, through, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and the like, because I wanted to push out the name, the brand, the messaging, all that stuff, push it out there and not just serve as an example for other people to follow, which, certainly you can, right? Take this, and run with it. But also, quite frankly, I'm trying to build this thing up. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is fairly easy to adapt. I'm not saying that it's not going to be costly to have somebody run a aggressive social media campaign for you on a continual basis or whatever the case may be. Maybe you need to divert somebody's attention from whatever it is that they're doing on the regular to actively promoting in social media. But if you want to be aggressive in growth and name exposure, then social media certainly seems to be the way to go. I mean, when you look at all of the short content videos, whether they're created on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever platform that people happen to use, the reach of those things and the reach of those things for free, you don't have to pay. And so if you have the ability then to have somebody drum up, media, whether it's on short form stuff, like a minute or two or less, depending on the platform. I've seen some short form videos that are very long, but they don't always have to be, right? It could just be short form content that somebody could digest. And remember that in addition to getting the name of your company out there and, from an industry perspective, getting what we do out there, whether it's millwright, electrician, pipe fitter, ironworker, whatever, the secondary benefit to this, which may turn into the primary benefit for you, is exposure to young people. Now, remember earlier in this podcast episode, as well as the previous one, if it's true that 68% of people go through high school and the guidance counselor never tells them about the trades, well, maybe it's time to be able to bypass the gatekeeper and go straight to social media. Have people talk about what the trades have done for them, right? In your company, what has it done, by becoming an iron worker, or what has it done, that you're an electrician now? What's the effect that's taken place with your family? What does that look like for you? What does it look like for your loved ones? But now that you're able to provide, right, and that you've got a skill and a trade that you can be proud of going forward, what does that look like? And that right there can spark young people's attention and mindset in the back and go, you know what? That guy is actually talking some good stuff. maybe then I need to actively look into that. And then you can also, right, put down, it's the devil's in the details, the little nuances, right? You could have contact information at the end of your video. All of your apparel could have a phone number or an email address associated with it on the social media sites to drive the content to you. I mean, I actually heard from one contractor in particular that said half of their business comes from LinkedIn recommendations. And the major reason why is because they're consistent. They are consistently posting content on LinkedIn. It's free. You have to take the time to formulate the responses and post the pictures, right? But, and that's a heavy but, it's free. You have to be intentional about doing all this, and this takes up some of your time. But is your time better spent crafting a quality company image to which you're trying to get not only the company name out there, but to get individuals and drive them to come work for you and join in the industry as a whole? Remember, we're addressing a stigma in addition to getting your name out there. Are you doing that? And what does it look like? And could you use some help? There's definitely people who grew up with technology at their fingertips. Are you capable of having a conversation with them and having, that persuasive dialogue and saying, hey, you want to get in on some of this right here? This is what you want to get in on. And while I'm talking about the social media stuff, right? Photos, just posting photos and posting quality content on LinkedIn is good for your company, especially in this space, but it's not going to drive the traffic to your website and there go, make your name a household name, if you will, make your company a household name. But linking things from, the various social media platforms to your website is certainly something that you should do. But that's in the still frame. That's in the pictures. That's not in videos. Video has, and when you start making videos, and there's a whole software that you got to sit here and dive through, right, and navigate through. And I know because I've done it. You have a huge potential, right? I could have done podcasting just in the audio realm. But I'm fully well aware that the more content that I put out there in video form, for one reason or the other, is infectious. More people will see it. More people will watch it. And if you're on like YouTube, for example, let's just pick YouTube because, almost everybody, even older folks, can watch YouTube. And you can just hit that short button at the bottom of your phone and everything's in portrait mode, which portrait mode is up and down. You can watch YouTube videos and you can see professionals, usually entrepreneurs or whatever, putting out videos. I mean, there are videos out there. I was just watching one with my brother the other day. The guy he's a plumber, and he's got some funny talking points over top of his video while he's actually doing the work that he's doing, pushing it out there. He's still an entrepreneur. He still resides in the trades. You know what he's doing with the social media? Not only is he increasing the exposure that he gets from a company perspective, he's also making money. He's also making a little side pocket change from the social media exposure. So you get two things for free. Not only do you get here to put your name out there and put the trade out there, right, and become more known, you're also getting paid for the views that you get because of ad content and all that stuff. Sounds like a win-win to me. Now it takes a measure of intentionality, right? So, for example, those of you who may be curious, I use on the video side of the house Riverside FM. And Riverside FM allows me to do some quality recording. It doesn't do like Zoom where it's over the internet and we have these quality breaks. It basically downloads onto the computer. And then what happens is, as I am, doing a post or a podcast, it's uploading it, right? So for example, right now it's at 99%. It's continually uploading it, but it doesn't have a internet breakage. It's just a measure of professionalism. And so I use Riverside FM for the visual stuff here. And then I turn around and use a software that's pretty well known. It's called DaVinci. And DaVinci allows me to do a little bit of video editing. Now, I'm pretty seamless on the podcast side, so I don't necessarily need to, compile a whole bunch of different videos and fades or whatever. I can sit down at the computer and in about 30 minutes just crank out a podcast episode, because this stuff lives rent free in my head. And so, it's sitting here toiling around in my dome piece, and I can just spit it out. And then I can go on to DaVinci then and bring in the intro music and the intro photo of the logo, as well as, put the outro music and the fades, the necessary fades in and out for both, as well as, the outro photo, and I can crank out a video. You could do the same. You could go on a job site and take you could do drone footage, right? You could do one-on-one conversations with tradesmen and women who are on the job for you, right? Of course, you're going to want to get permission if you're a sub for sure on a general, but you can do these things. It takes a level of intentionality, but you can do these things. And next thing you know, you can sit here and compile, right? A 5 to 10 minute video, if that's how much you wanted to put in there, of you having conversations, highlighting your company, highlighting the work you do with the background music that you want. It takes a little bit more time than just saying, okay, well, I'll just throw the chips on the table and they can land where they may. But the intentionality of this is important here, because you as a company could be doing a few different things, getting your name out there. You could be helping the industry as a whole, and you could also be enticing younger people to come work for you. Social media has a lot of negatives to it. And those of you who are older have walked around on job sites and you've seen people with their cell phone in their hand, so much so that there are companies and job sites that are going to, okay, if you are not a foreman or above and you don't need to have a phone, leave your phone in the lunchbox. I don't want to see it till lunchtime. I certainly understand it. When people are unable to regulate their own social media usage when they should be working, I totally understand it. However, social media also it's amoral. It has some positives to it. People can use the positives to propel the industry, right? To begin to push back against the stigma, as well as openly and actively promote your company and recruit. So to that end, why would you then not use social media? Don't be lazy. And I know that term, people gnash their teeth at me, and you can sit here and tell me you work 12-hour days, and I'm not saying that you're lazy in that regard. I'm saying you can work hard in that area and realm and be lazy in recruiting. You could. And it might just need somebody else to do it for you. Somebody on your team. Somebody who has a little bit more technological experience, or you can do like me and you can learn it all yourself. And it's a hell of a learning curve, but it's worth it as far as I'm concerned. So don't dismiss social media and the power of it. And the more you go all in on it, the better you as a company are going to be, especially down the line. Now, number 3, and this is something that I suspect that few people are going to seriously entertain, but in line with social media, you could do like a documentary. And this could be whether you're partnering up with somebody at large in your area, other firms, other craft that you work closely with, right? What does it look like for you as somebody who has, become an electrician? And then you're cutting to having that conversation about how it's impacted their entire life. And then you're talking to somebody from an ironworker background. Then you're talking to somebody from a pipe fitter background. Maybe it's a family, whatever. But you're building a larger video, if you will, a docu-series. And again, this makes more sense, at least to me anyway, when you have like at a trades level in an area or whatever, where you're actively going to promote it and push it out to the various social media and whatnot, and everybody's kind of come together. I certainly think it has huge implications. Last episode, I said that I knew of an individual who had become an iron worker, and before he had done so, he had never left the reservation where he grew up on. And after he had finished his apprenticeship, he was able to take his whole entire family on a vacation to Hawaii. That has power. That testimony has power. And when you are partnering up with other entities and you bring that together and you say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come together and we're going to create a documentary on, what has the skilled trades coming through a registered apprenticeship program done for you. It could even be that you actually include, right, somebody within your own town, like whether it's at the city council level or whether it is at the state level, if or the city level from the Department of Labor, or whatever it happens to be from a government perspective and official, where you can sit here and say, okay, you have been intentional about changing people's lives, and what you're really doing now is just getting the information out there. That's what we do a really poor job of. We do great at going to work every day, keeping our nose to the grind and working, right? And tangibly seeing something at the end of the day. But gone are the days where we can sit here and think to ourselves, well, people are just going to flock to our industry because it's been, it's been a stay. It's been something that's there. It's been a flag planted in the ground that people can come and gather around, and they're going to make a good living. There are entire industries that we have to compete with, and it's starting from the ground up. So I think a documentary, I think there's room for it. I just think it's in a different space. And the fourth one that I'm going to talk about is going to be actual recruitment campaigns. Many of us think, okay, well, I'll just put a job out there on Indeed, and that's going to be it. That's like, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it doesn't work as effectively as other methods. Like going and talking to, and by the way, bypassing the guidance counselor, right? Instead of waiting for them, and I know I cast a lot of shade at them last episode, and the first one for that matter, but instead of waiting for them to come to you, maybe you should go to them. Maybe you should go to them. Maybe you should partner up with some other trades and say, okay, well, let's have a recruitment event and let's do this and let's do that. And what does it look like, right? Flesh it out. Because when you're in the driver's seat, you can make it whatever you want. I've got somebody who I'm going to have on the podcast eventually. I got a lot of solo content to get out before I start bringing in other guests. But I want to pick his brain. And the major reason why I want to pick his brain is because he is embodying this recruitment campaign thing. And one of the things, we had a conversation about a month and a half, two months ago, where he was telling me one of the things that he's seeing is there are people who are reaching out to him that he's never had before. Excuse me. That's being intentional about getting your name out there. So recruitment campaigns for sure are just one additional way that you can sit out here and get your name out there and begin to eradicate, or at least address, the stigma that we all seem to be smeared with. Okay. And the last thing that I'll say is this. For those of you, and this is going to be a whole podcast episode later on down the line, but for those of you who sit here and think, okay, well, I'm not going to do these things. I'm busy doing whatever it is I'm doing. I'm not going to partake in this. I'll actually hire recruitment firms to help me recruit people or whatever the case may be. My suspicions are, from a statistical perspective, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to adopt that very mindset. And what you're going to see is twofold. Number one, a lot more companies competing for a lot fewer people. And then you're going to see in about 10 years a recruitment problem that should have stayed a recruitment problem becoming a retention problem. And what I mean by that is those in the recruitment space, when you're not actively engaged on a continual basis at bringing new blood in, however it looks and whatever the reasons and the mechanics that you have to do it by, those people that you're relying on doing the job now, which are mostly late 20s, very, very early 30s, they're going to be the ones in 10 years that have got that 10 years, 12 years of experience, and you're going to over rely on them and you're going to overwork them. And you're going to see an attrition rate. And then you're really going to paint yourself into a corner. So do yourself, your firm, the people who are working for you, and the industry as a whole a favor. Be far more proactive in what you're doing, in regards to addressing a stigma and recruiting people, right? And let's use the power and presence of the internet and social media and the various formats that we can sit here and talk about to your advantage, in addition to those who are working for you and the company. Lastly, and this is a shameless plug here, but it's what it is. I finally got my shirt in the mail. When you go to the website, you can go to the shop page. I've had some people ask me about it, right? So now you can see it, real life. It's nice, it's soft, made in USA, and support your local podcaster, right? I could definitely use all the support to get all this good content out there, because I got a whole slew of stuff to record later on down the line. So let's create a concerted effort to address the stigma and make some positive strides for our industry. All right. And if you have any other ideas, if there's anything else that you think we should be doing that I didn't mention, go on over to the contact page and hit me up, send me an email, and let's see what it looks like. So, all right. Well, this is Wealthy Ironworker Podcast. This is, tools and tips and tricks or whatever to address the stigma. Happy New Year, everybody. I'll see you on the next one.